listening to Community Forum on KCCC 930 AM, sponsored by Eddy County, honoring God, country, and family, thriving with industry since 1889. Thank you for listening to Community Forum. My name is Johnny Chandler. I'm the owner of KCCC 930 AM, the host of Community Forum, and with me today for our second Women's History Month special is Sky Soto.
Hi, everyone.
Sky Soto is the Marketing and Communications Director here at Southeast Mexico College.
Yes, I'm the Director of Marketing and Publications.
Okay, thank you for correcting that. That's the second interview that I've gotten that title incorrect. And then across from me, the feature of our second Women's History Month special is Professor Patricia Zane Biebelle.
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 Yeah.
Which we will now refer to as Zane for the remainder of the program. I knew I was going to get that wrong too.
It's hard.
And you know what's really great about being the host of the show is I can get it wrong and it's okay.
Yeah, you would control the whole thing.
Yeah,
so.
yeah. I was like, I do no research, therefore you can tell me everything. And then my wife just tells me you're just being lazy. And I know I get away with it.
And you're very pleased with yourself, too.
Yeah, it's all good. Look at us. AM Community Radio. We're not going to take ourselves too seriously.
Nah.
All right, so this is our Women's History Month special. We are profiling incredible women leaders here at Southeast New Mexico College. We will do other profiles of other individuals in the college as well, but this month is going to be about Women's History Month and such. So Sky Soto has crafted some very elegant questions, and we're going to kind of let her take it over, and I'm just going to chime in whenever I feel like it.
Yeah, so Zane, what inspired you to pursue your career, and what do you enjoy about it the most?
So, I am a professor of English here at the college, and so I'm really lucky in the fact that I get to do what I'm passionate about, which is teaching, and teaching English in particular, and writing in even more particular. So if I think about what inspired me to pursue education, when I was an undergrad at New Mexico State University, I took the communication course, which back then it was COM 265. And in that class, you had like a lab component because there were 150 students in the main lecture. And so you had a lab component where there was like a smaller group. And one day we had to do impromptu speeches. And so there were all these little pictures the instructor had cut out of magazines back when we had those things. And you had to like basically look at the pictures, make a speech like impromptu. So I got up in front of the class and I like had no problem with it. And that was a thing that led me to realize I'm good on my feet, right? Like I can keep people both interested and entertained, which I think are really important skills that an educator needs to have. And so coupling that with my love of writing, I have a Master of Fine Arts in Creative Writing with a focus in fiction from University of Oregon. And so teaching at a community college in particular, teaching writing is a pretty logical career path for somebody with my education. And so all of that stuff kind of came together. And I furthermore got intensely lucky in that I managed to find a full-time faculty job in English, which is very rare, and then even more rarely in my hometown. So I'm from Carlsbad originally. And like I said, I went to New Mexico State for my undergrad. I went to Oregon for my master's degree. And then I found a full-time faculty job at what was NMSU Carlsbad.
So let me ask a question on that, Zane. You mentioned that a full-time faculty English professor, right?
Yeah.
Is very rare.
Yeah.
Help me understand that. I assume that every college and every university has a full-time faculty member in English.
Well, that's true, right? And English, most every degree, certainly here at SENMC, but even across the country, like freshman composition, the 100 level English is going to be like required. One of the things about English professors is they don't retire.
Oh, okay. There we go. I was like, wait a minute.
Right. So it's a real tight market in a lot of ways. Right. And so with any academics, really, this is kind of true. A lot of times academics are having to get jobs in places that they wouldn't necessarily choose, but they want a job. And so I'm really lucky in that there was a job here in my hometown at the college, and I applied and I got it. And so again, I consider myself very lucky that opportunity came my way at a time. I had graduated graduate school about 2 or 3 years before, and I was kind of doing a little part-time work here and there. And yeah, it was just kind of like a really lucky thing that I was looking at Indeed.com at a terrible job that I hated. And I saw this posting and I was like, I'm going to throw my hat in the ring.
So you got your master's in 2013 from the University of Oregon?
It was 2010.
2010,
yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
So you've been working at NMSU Carlsbad or SNMC since 2013?
Yes.
as per your bio on the website, because
Yes.
I did do a little research.
Oh, wow.
sorry.
I feel special.
I even know your favorite quote.
Good. I'll be testing you later.
So my only question on that before we get right back to Sky taking over is there's been a transition. You were here for the transition. You were hardcore New Mexico State University, Carlsbad. Now you're hardcore Southeast New Mexico College. Give us a brief idea on the transition and how it feels and what you're thinking.
Well, I think it's really great. I was, when all that started, which was like in the summer of 2020, like pandemic time, New Mexico State made some decisions that were really distressing to people here at the college, myself included. And even kind of worse, we found out about them by like reading the trade publications.
Yeah.
Right. You didn't get an email.
No, it was like I was on Facebook and Inside Higher Ed was like, NMSU, blah, 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 community college. And I was like, what? So, that was a big motivating factor, I think, for a lot of us. I'm proud to say that I was really involved in the independence movement. I went to all the mayor's higher education task force meetings, which were at 7:00 in the morning on Wednesdays, which
awesome.
if you know me, 7:00 in the morning is not my favorite time. But I worked really hard to get people here on the campus, educated and on board with this change. And so I think the best thing about independence is the resources that this community provides to this college. We are finally able to give them something for their money, quite frankly, right? We're supported by the county, by oil and gas. And before, all that money was sitting in Las Cruces' reserves, and we did not receive the benefits, and the community didn't either. And now we have the ability to really do that. And I think it's one of the best things. It's certainly happened for the college, and I hope the community understands how grateful we are that they were such a big part of that.
Yeah, I think, the transition was a very great process as well. It was great to be able to see the community and the campus.
Were you, Sky,
together.
were you here for the entire transition before
Yes.
and after as well?
Yep.
So you didn't graduate from New Mexico State, did you?
No.
Okay, so Zane, graduating from New Mexico State, being an alumni of New Mexico State, working for NMSU, which is kind of like, wow, NMSU has a very special place in your heart. You have to when you go to a school as an undergraduate, typically, right? So does it hurt that NMSU Carlsbad just kind of shunned this place?
That's an interesting question. I don't know that I have like super like Aggie love in my heart. Natural. I'm kind of not that kind of person.
She has a Pistol Pete cut out in her office.
Yeah, I don't have a tattoo or anything, right? Like, I don't have any tattoos for the record if my mother's listening, but
Okay.
I'm not really that like school spirity. I love this place. I have very school spirit to SENMC, but they just really didn't treat us right. Throughout the transition, I did compare it to a divorce, and at times an acrimonious divorce, and the way that we had been sort of treated by New Mexico State as the college was not sometimes the nicest. And we were really confined, being a part of the system. And so I really didn't have too much trouble saying goodbye to NMSU, but that's kind of I'm a Sagittarius, so saying goodbye is easy for me.
I'm a Capricorn. It's not too far away.
I know.
So Sky, real quick, what about the transition for you? How's it been?
I think it's been great. It's been great seeing students actually feel like they're a part of something.
Mm-hmm.
Last year we had our first commencement ceremony as SENMC, and we saw students with like Eddie the Mountain Lion painted on their hats and, embracing the school colors. So for me, like, it's really great to see all those hours, all those meetings, all of the brainstorming that went into that come to life, and students, faculty, and staff actually embracing that. People from out of town buying stuff from the bookstore with the SENMC branding on it. So it's a really great feeling to see things come to life and finally come to being here on campus.
Well, I'd like to thank both of you personally for the hard work that you put into making SCMC independent, and anybody else on campus that I haven't had a chance to thank, because there's so many more people that work here that are paid more fairly than there's opportunities at the college that weren't there before. Because of you two working so hard and everybody else on campus making it independent, the fact that I'm even here is the reason. Wouldn't even be possible if it wasn't for you guys. So there's so many doors that have opened up in so many different arenas besides just the academic side as well. So I just want to thank both of you for that.
Well, thank you. And I do think that really goes for everybody in the college, who was there at the time, and the community. We would not be here without the community of Carlsbad being behind us so definitely. And so, we all owe a lot to a lot of people, and it was an effort on our part as well. So,
and we didn't mean for this conversation to be so independent focused. I just know that Zane was so instrumental in that. So small sidetrack, but actually that was like a 10-minute sidetrack. So go ahead, Sky.
So what are some challenges you have faced as a woman in your career?
Well, that's really an interesting question. I think that the challenges sometimes are they have to do with, and I don't want to say credibility. That I'm really struggling with this because I have some ideas about it, but on the other hand, it's tempered. I think both the fact that I'm a woman and, I started this job when I was in my early 30s, and I also look very young. And for those of you in radio land,
I'm surprised that she's I'm surprised she's not enrolled in school right now, folks.
So, and especially, 10 years ago, 12 years ago, I looked younger because I was younger. I think that sometimes people don't necessarily take a younger woman seriously as much as they should. And so that has probably been a challenge as a woman that I've faced. I think that sort of thing is like subconscious almost. I don't think, for the most part, I don't think anybody is setting out to make those decisions, but it does happen. And so I think that's something that I have kind of had to struggle with, which I think is a very common thing for women and young women in particular. I think as I have gotten older, that is less of a problem in that aspect. I've also sort of earned my stripes, right? Like in my little pond, right? Like I have put a lot of work in. People know my work ethic and they know what I'm capable of. And so a lot of that has kind of fallen by the wayside. But I do know, like I've had experiences with this sort of pat you on the head, be a good girl, which is not my way of being. So that's another part of it. I'm not afraid to speak my mind. And so, that might put a little conflict into it. But overall, I think education is a more aware workplace of these issues than maybe some other fields.
Yeah, I agree with you completely. So, I worked in journalism in Albuquerque for a long time in a television newsroom, and it was very much that way. It was very, very progressive, right? I've always had female bosses the whole time. Trans and gay individuals were welcomed in newsrooms long before they were welcomed in the rest of society.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just like community colleges, universities in general, journalism. Anybody that's trying to push in the envelope tends to be more open in those industries than others that aren't.
Yeah.
Just from my experience as well.
Yeah, and I've my actual real career, I've been here my whole. I mean, in my 20s and 30s, I waited tables. I was an assistant, stuff like that. My real career has been here in higher education. So I understand that out there, in the real world, the dynamics might be almost shockingly different for me. But I'm lucky that I've been here, right? So I'm really happy with that.
I agree. I feel like, my journey's been kind of similar. I started working here when I was younger as well.
She was a baby.
And Zane, she's been one of my greatest mentors here and cheerleaders while I navigated that world. So I think, that's something that a lot of women deal with, and it is very common. So it's really great to hear that.
Well, yeah, and we're proud of you too.
Thank
Because
you.
you were like 20. How old were you when you started here?
I think it was 23.
She was 23
I was like
years
straight out of
old.
college.
Yeah.
I would ask you how long ago that was, but I don't want you to. You're not supposed to ask a woman's age.
She's still very young. I have revealed my age. This guy is still a very young, powerful woman, so we like that about her.
So anyways, what would you tell other women or girls that are interested in your field?
So English in particular, I would say, just work really hard. That's the secret to my success. I have to say, I love what I do. I'm super passionate about it. I think we're in a time of a lot of transition in society and also particularly in education. We do have a lot of things that are changing very rapidly, AI being one of them, especially in a discipline like mine, which is about writing. I am always a little, because, like we talked about at the beginning of the interview, because jobs in higher education are relatively rare, that always gives me a little bit of pause. Like when I talk to students who are interested in these paths, I'm like, it's kind of a crapshoot. So that would be kind of the thing that I would say. But the other thing I would say is find to young women to find the things that they really love and to pursue them, and being able to do that is such a gift. And so I think being open to those gifts and realizing, I think especially young people, having been a young person from Carlsbad, I think there's this desire to like get out of here as soon as possible. And I totally recognize that and I understand it. But I also think that returning with a different perspective and being willing to like be of service to your community is a really nice thing to choose if that's a choice that's available.
Yeah, I think that's really important. It's just learning from your life experiences and then giving that back to everyone. That's awesome. And what does Women's History Month mean to you?
Well, I think it means that, women's history deserves to be recognized. And, we are half the population. We've been here the whole time. And so, the fact that we can take a month where we recognize the contributions of women throughout history, I think is really valuable. And the stories that we can tell now that we weren't able to tell for a long time, I think that's extremely valuable too. And I think just recognizing the contributions that women have made again since the beginning of time, because there were both types of people from the very beginning. So I that's part of what it means to me.
Do you have an historical female figure, a mentor, if you will, somebody that was kind of a female that inspired you from somebody that struggled also, right? But maybe like somebody that tried to vote even,
Well, it's really funny. One of my biggest heroes, and I was just talking about her today, Laura Ingalls Wilder, who wrote the Little House on the Prairie books. I grew up on a ranch outside of Carlsbad, and I grew up. We didn't have neighbors, right? So my friends were like my little brother, cats, dogs, and books. Like those were my friends. I couldn't ride my bike down the street and play whatever town kids do. And so Laura Ingalls Wilder has always been an inspiration to me because, she was also like a rural person, and talk about facing hardship, right? Like the hardship that people who, came to this part of the world, which, was occupied by other people. And of course we have some settler colonialism there, but, that has always been a great inspiration to me. And her life is very interesting. And again, even once she got past her like child and teenage years, which is what the books are about, her adult life was also quite challenging. But I think the gift that she gave, memorializing that way of life, I think is great. And I do think about her. And when I went to graduate school, I wrote about how she was like an inspiration to my writing, which is funny, but it really was.
That's great. That's not funny. That's great.
Because, she understands setting and like the way that she portrays the culture that she's talking about, they were very formative books to me when I started reading them in third grade. So,
sure.
Yeah.
So, what future do you hope for women and girls in higher education?
Well, I think, we see already that women are really coming into a more equal place in higher education. It's been a long process. When I first started here, the statistics were that, only, I don't know, I'm kind of like, let's say around 75% of full professors were men. That's the highest rank that, if you're in higher education, you can receive. And I think those numbers are shifting pretty quickly, although it took a long time to get there. I think that, like we talked about a little bit earlier, education is a progressive atmosphere. And so there are less of those kinds of strictures put on women. And so I think that more women and girls, women are going to be moving into leadership positions. And we see that nationwide. And I think that's the thing. I also, leadership is something that I'm very interested in. And so I think that those are the doors that are continuing to open for women in this field.
If you could give your younger self advice, what would it be?
Well, I mean, if it were personal advice, I don't want to say it on the radio, but I would have something to say to somebody in my,
sometimes the people we choose to be our confidence in life early on are not the right ones.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But as far as, we'll keep it there. As far as, if I'm thinking about educational career advice, I would tell myself to be okay with the fact that it takes some time. So I actually, I went to college straight out of high school. I ended up dropping out of college for 5 years. And then I went back when I turned 25. Sorry. And I finished my bachelor's degree and went straight to get my master's degree. And I took a lot of flack for that in my family because, like, what are you doing? Why aren't you in school? And I know it was all said with love and like concern, but I think that it was the right choice for me. And so maybe I would just affirm that choice in my younger self, like myself in my early 20s. I would say it's going to be all right.
Did you go and party for like 5 years? Or?
Well, I'm a nerd. Partying is like a real, but I waited tables for most of that time, and I just kind of like didn't feel like doing school. I had like done really well in, all through K through 12, and I was kind of burnt out. I mean, I think this happens to a lot of kind of overachievers. You get to college and you have a lot of freedom, and you kind of just don't want to do it for a while. And so, what I got a lot was like, oh, you're wasting your potential and that sort of thing. And I was like, don't tell me what to do. But then when I was ready to go back, it was like, I, finished my degree. I had a 4.0. I went straight to graduate school. My University of Oregon was really competitive at that time for Masters of Fine Arts. And, I'm really proud of everything that I accomplished.
You didn't waste your time.
No,
you set yourself up to succeed because it just wasn't the right time.
It wasn't the right time. Yeah. Dragging myself through something that I wasn't enjoying or I wasn't ready for would have been a waste of my time. And so that's not really advice, right? I'm just like affirming that choice. I think for me, it was the right choice.
Feel confident in some of your decisions, because it's real hard to be confident in yourself and your decisions when you're an incredibly young person starting in the world. It's really easy to second guess yourself all the time, and it really bothers me. And then so I can see when you were saying that, you were almost a little apprehensive to tell us that you took 5 years off now, right? Well, I remember that when I went to college, I had to take high school English and high school math again my first semester of college, right? And I was embarrassed by that at first. But now I look back on that, it's real simple. I really needed to take it twice to get it. It's not a shot. It's not a demerit. It's like I took it twice and then it clicked. Taking it once didn't. Taking it the second time did. It's not a negative thing. This is what was right for you at the moment.
Right. And I too, I see students sometimes who have struggled with English or writing, in high school. And oftentimes I'm like, you just didn't have the right teacher. Mm-hmm. I think that's a big part of it, like the person who can actually get it to you. I think this is true of math as well. But, in my field, I'm like, you just don't say you don't like writing if you haven't really given it a chance, for instance. And so I think opening those doors for people is really important. And understand, and that's one of the things I love about community college. We have students from all different backgrounds, different ages, and this door is open for them when they're ready to walk through it. And maybe they try to walk through twice and it didn't work. The third time, third time's a charm.
This is what I like. I was interviewing President Beardmore a while back for the General Obligation bonds last year. And I was like, we meet people where they're at. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And so he's like, you kind of got the fever. It's like, we're all about the community and we're here to help them a dozen times if needed. Yep. Which is a unique thing compared to some universities, right? Oh, you messed up. Goodbye.
Yeah,
who's
you're
next?
out. Yeah.
Right. I actually think it's quite wonderful, and I really love the environment here as a result.
It is one of the most valuable things that community colleges have. And then the students have that experience too, where they're in a classroom with like 16-year-olds, but also, 50, 60, 70-year-olds. And that mix of people, the mix of experiences. When I was at University of Oregon, I taught freshmen. They were 18. Mm-hmm. The biggest problem they had was they went to LA and they didn't have recycling for plastic bottles. It was in Oregon. You have to keep that in mind.
Yeah, right. Yeah. No,
I would usually do the accent, but I'm not doing it today.
They were recycling long before anybody was.
Yeah. So they were really upset when they went to LA and they couldn't throw their plastic water bottle in a recycling bin. And so, I'm like, ugh. But our students, they know struggle, but they also know resilience, and they know what it takes to succeed even when things are really hard. And I would much rather be in that company than, not that there's anything wrong with being 18 and the biggest problem is a recycling issue, but I do have more interest in people who have had a little more gritty journey.
So can you discuss your approach of how you mentor young students, particularly female?
I think that in some ways, my presence, the way that I take up space is a form of mentoring. And I think also, I'm uniquely positioned as a teacher of writing. Writing is the time when you get to say whatever you want and nobody can interrupt you. Nobody can, and when I read your writing, I am only paying attention to you. When we speak to each other, that's not the case, right? Like we interrupt each other all the time, and it's not for any reason, but that's how conversation works. And so the other thing that I love about writing is it gives you another chance you can go back and fix it. When we talk, as a person who, sometimes you say things, you're like, why did I say that? You can't get those words back. But with writing, you can always revise and you can have it better. And so I think that's one of the ways that I mentor young women. I will say I have a composition class this year at 5:30, and it's mostly young women in that class. And I'm so proud of what they're doing. And another job that I have with them is I want to give them the inside information they need to know to be successful in college, and I'm well positioned to do that. And so all of those things, I think I mentor mostly by caring about them and about their lives. And so I think that's important. I will say too, though, I also, young men, I love teaching young men. I love seeing them also learn these same sorts of lessons. I'm not like trying to be hashtag both sides or whatever, but I do think there's like a little bit of it, because I love seeing people succeed regardless of their gender, obviously. But I do, it is Women's History Month, so we'll put it on the girls and women. So
yeah. And like I said earlier, you've been a great mentor towards me, and especially during the transition and helping me navigate through that and other things on campus. So I just want to thank you again for that.
Well, thank you so much. And that really makes my day, Sky. And I'm so proud. I mean, I have watched you grow from a tiny child, basically, a child employee, into, a great professional, a mother. Like, I'm really proud of the things that you've done here. So that's really nice. Yeah.
So who are some of the female educators and leaders that you admire, and why?
I have a lot of admiration for a lot of my colleagues here. April Addington, who teaches math, Lacey Davis, who is a former colleague. She works at WIP now. My contemporaries, my peers, quite frankly, I have a lot of respect for them. I've also had some, when I started my teaching career, I was working at UNM Valencia, which is in Las Lunas, and I was really lucky to have two very strong women in leadership that I was working for. Patricia Gillikin was a professor of English, and Rosa Arguleta was like the dean of the area that I was working for, and both of them were really, really great mentors. I have to say that I haven't been mentored overly much in my own life, and I think I've had a lot of bosses who are men. So, but really those two from UNM Valencia stand out as people that I really learned a lot from. And I think too, like sometimes you can look at women for a model of power. I like leadership. I'm interested in making things better. And I think power is one way that you can do that. And so one of my role models in kind of a funny way is Nancy Pelosi. And I know that's controversial to say, but one of the things that I really admire about her is her body language. So she always, when she's really serious, she clasps her hands in front of her and she puts them down on the podium or the desk or whatever. And she doesn't move her hands around a lot. And I remember seeing her give a press conference or something where she did that. And I thought, look at that. Because sometimes, when you're excited, you flap your hands. And that stillness, I thought was really very much something to look at. And so if you're ever in a meeting with me and I clasp my hands on the table, like, it's about to get real. Like, I'm giving away all my secrets. Like,
I hope some of our young students are listening to AM radio.
Yeah, I'm telling you all the secrets. Like, just clasp your hands and sit still and let them flap, because that's going to make you very powerful in a room. So,
All right, Sky, we only got like a couple minutes left on our time. Actually, this has flown by. So go ahead and let's run through those questions so we don't go over by too much.
Yeah. What is one lesson or story about Women's History Month that you believe every student should learn?
Well, I think anything about the sort of struggle to get the right to vote in this country is really important for us to all remember, for women to get the right to vote. Those great suffragettes who worked really hard and, sometimes had hunger strikes, chained themselves to things. I mean, they were doing really active, direct action protest. And I think that's really important. Similarly, like civil rights, the struggle for both, trans, gay, lesbian rights. I think all of those things are really valuable. I think about Stonewall, which is, more of the LGBTQ thing, but there were women involved in those struggles as well. And so those would be some of the things. Times of struggle are the times that maybe we need to look to and think about how people dealt with challenges.
Is there anything else you'd like to add? Did we miss anything?
Oh, I think this was extremely thorough. I do. And, I had a great time. And I just want to say that women have the ability to accomplish a lot. And I want every girl and woman to really think about that and think about, you can open doors, and if they won't open the doors, then open them yourself. Like, I'm a firm believer in that, and understand that having power is a positive thing. And the more women who have power, I think the better. Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who's not I have some ideas about her. She said, like, women belong in the rooms where power is. Mm-hmm. And I firmly believe that as well.
Right. So, a word after a word after a word is power.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
See, I like power.
So that is from Margaret Atwood,
yes.
which is your favorite quote, which is on the SNMC website. So, I mean, I think that quote, you embody it. You live by that quote every day. Now that we've talked to you for 30 minutes, Guy, I mean, I think it's pretty obvious that quote really sums you up greatly. Oh. I actually think you use the power that you have on this campus in very responsible, delicate ways. And I also love being in public meetings with you. You always throw a challenge out there. You make the meeting a little more fun, and you make people think too. Right?
Yeah, I do. Really I do strive for all of those things. I do think you can leave in a lot with humor, with like being relatable. And I also think you have to be willing to say the hard things. And that is something that I do think is a skill of mine. And so that quote is from The Handmaid's Tale, which is my favorite novel by Margaret Atwood. And it really is, I have it in my office. It is very important to me. So I'm glad you brought it up. Like, I love it. So.
Scott, do you have anything else you want to add to this?
No, I just want to say thank you to Zane for being on the radio show with us, and thank you for all you do at SENMC.
Well, thank both of you guys, and I loved this conversation. It was great. Have me back anytime. Huh?
Yes, great. Thank you all.
You're listening to Community Forum on KCCC 930 AM, sponsored by Eddy County, honoring God, country, and family, thriving with industry since 1889.